I own extremely rare Pokemon cards, so why am I not a millionaire? Today we're going to talk about exactly that topic. Before I dive into the topic though, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. We're almost at 800. I feel like this is the snail mail version of channel growth, but you guys are great, so thank you for your support. So I was recently listening / watching to this podcast called the Midweek Machamps. It's hosted by Jar Chomp and Oyama Trading. Very, very articulate individuals, and they cover topics that are, a little more niche and more mainstream, and they do so in a great manner. So shout out to them. I would suggest watching that. In their recent episode that I was watching, I believe it was Jar Chomp, who does a lot of like the vendor POV content. He was discussing that anybody who has rare Pokemon cards right now is like absolutely crushing it, insane. And so I was sitting back reflecting on that, and I was thinking to myself, well, I've got some rare cards, rarer than the Illustrator. So why am I not a millionaire yet? And it caused me to do a little bit of reflecting, but not actually that much because I know exactly why already. But I just think this is an interesting perspective to share in this format and to be delivered in this manner. But for reference, I have a few cards that are like dramatically rarer than the Illustrator. The Illustrator, obviously, in PSA 10, sold for $16 million and some change. And by change, I mean like more than I make in a year, in addition to the $16 million. But I own card, and just for reference, like there's always been like a moving scale on the Illustrator in terms of how many exist. There was an intended distribution of, I think, 39, but there's actually projected to be more like 80 that exist currently, are what the projections are. Maybe they're up to 100 now, and plus or minus. Some degree of that might just be speculation due to like crack and resubmits. But I digress. I own a card that there are likely single digits of in the world. The example that I'll give specifically are my white border test print Scythers. And I know that the white border test prints are not everybody's favorite card just because they're not as like flashy or as exciting as something like the Discos or a traditional trophy card or whatever. So before you roll your eyeballs out of their sockets, just listen up. So to give some context, the white border test prints are from the set, in this case, Jungle. And the only known sheets to get white border test prints from that set are the non-holo rares. And the non-holo rare sheet, and we know this because like the sheet was still intact for one of the two copies that I own of this card. There's like between 7 and 9 of any given non-holo rare on that sheet, from my understanding. But I have a test print Scyther from 2 different sheets. So one is square cut, and I've discussed this on the channel. I'll cut to the chase in a second, but this is necessary back information. And the other one actually is rounded on the corners and is like super beat up, dirty, while the other one is like relatively clean. The difference being one came from a sheet that was like professionally cut by a third party just a few years ago, and the other one was cut back in like the year 2000 by some kid in his living room with a pair of safety scissors. With that said, I've got no evidence supporting the fact that all the other Scythers from that like living room sheet still exist, but I know one of them does. So let's look at like the high end of like 8, like, okay, I said between 7 and 9, right? So let's assume generously that there's like 10 copies of that Scyther that exist. I own 2 of them. So there's that. The fact that like there's only 10 known copies to exist in the world makes it way rarer than the Pikachu Illustrator. But when we consider what is actually like going on with that card, the answer lies in that space. So first of all, Scyther is not as popular as Pikachu, is the most low-hanging fruit. And then we have also like levels of obscurity between the 2 cards. So anyone who at this point understands or knows about Pokemon knows about the Illustrator because it's become more or less a household name via Logan Paul. So that's a card that most people know about. While many people know about Scyther, many people would recognize a Jungle card. The obscurity of the white border test prints is just so great. Like, first of all, not that many people know that they exist even today with like this insane level of market exposure and awareness. Second of all, just because you know about them doesn't mean you care about them. I like these cards a lot because they're rare and they're like kind of a, kind of like a weird oddity. They're super niche, and my favorite Pokemon is Scyther. So those are the reasons I like these cards. The rarity is a cool feature. It's like a neat asset to them as well. But the fact of the matter is like just so few people know about them, and even less people actually care about them, that those are not $1 million cards. Do I think that there's a world where somebody could buy them for more than I paid for them? Certainly. But again, we're talking about kind of like some stars aligning there. Whereas if you actually take a step back and you look at the types of cards that are causing people to become millionaires, a couple different things are happening. Number one, somebody is working at scale, which means it's not like the individual cards that they have that are making the difference. It is the amount of cards that they're handling. So the amount of cards they're buying for X and selling for Y, with the implication that there is a positive price differential from X to Y. So that's probably the most common way that people are becoming millionaires, or pursuing that right now. But then if you take a look at like individual isolated scenarios of like which specific cards are more than likely causing people to become millionaires over others currently, well, guys, it's actually super obvious. It's painfully obvious is the answer that I hate to give you. But it's like the best stuff does the best. And maybe I can't put that out like indefinitely and as like a permanent truth, but that's kind of what happened in the 2020 timeframe, and that's kind of what we're seeing right now as well. The best cards are doing the best. Other than the Pikachu Illustrator, like what are some insanely expensive cards that we've seen go in auction, or we've heard of private sales for, or whatever? Well, first edition base set Charizard. We already had copies selling for above the previous boom's peak of like what, 450 or 485,000. We had copies selling for above $500,000, and then the one with Logan Paul's name on the label sold for almost $1 million. First edition base set Charizard in 10, other than trophy cards, that's the marquee item in the hobby. Best card did the best. And we're not talking percent gain, because I could look at something like I have a PSA 9 Rocket Scyther, the Japanese one from like Rocket Gang Strikes Back. Well, that card I bought for like $70, and I just listed it for something like $350. So that's like a 5x. So if we're looking at a percent gain basis, that PSA 9 Scyther actually has gone up for more than like the first edition base set Charizard. But then you zoom out and we're talking about a difference of $280 versus a difference of $500,000. So they're not even on the same planet, not even in the same galaxy. So there's that. Another example is like the Gold Star Rayquaza. Like thinking that would be a 5-figure card. Many people who dealt in high-end cards speculated that like the previous boom's sale of like $49,000 or $46,000 might be the peak price that we ever see that card sell for. Well, here we are, folks. And what is the Gold Star Rayquaza? It's the best mid-era card. It's the best Gold Star card. And Gold Stars are the best rarity, arguably, from the mid-era. And so, again, this is just kind of illustrating the fact that the best cards do the best in these types of climates. And so from there, the only point of speculation becomes, is this going to happen again? Or is there still meat left on the bone for stuff like this to magnify in the current climate? And those are questions I can't answer for you. I would suggest, though, that for me personally, I am pretty bullish on Pokemon. I think that as Pokemon continues to spread in terms of like their reach globally, like, there was a lot of marketing specifically towards other continents and other countries that currently don't have, say, as much exposure to Pokemon as like Asia or North America. So there's that happening, which is going to obviously scoop up some more consumers. As long as there's still like places where Pokemon is trying to target that are like emerging markets for them, I think China back in like 2021, that was very much the case there. Well, the pie is going to continue to grow. So long as there's still that type of phenomena happening, I think that Pokemon is still going to be doing good. And so that would be like my bull case on, the best stuff doing even better down the line. But as to whether or not I think that whether I think that the first edition base set Charizard in PSA 10, is it going to go to 2 million before this boom subsides? I genuinely have no idea. I think that, there's going to be a pretty high level of demand carrying through the year 2026, and I've already kind of talked about that, but I'm not going to go out and like try to make a crystal ball prediction of like, does all the high end stuff have room to double again? It could or it couldn't, is my general answer. But with that said, if you want the best odds of becoming a millionaire, if this type of phenomena occurs again, then make sure you have the best stuff. Don't have the white border test print Scythers. You want to have a first edition base set Charizard or a Gold Star Rayquaza, right? Those are the types of items you want to have. The good stuff, not the bad stuff. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.